First thing I want to talk about is that 7 out of 10 kids are leaving youth sports by the age of 13. That's all sports. Not just all sports in North America, because I'm American, obviously, but all sports across the world. We talk to our friends in any corner of the world, and they talk about the fact kids are leaving the game. Does anybody know who our biggest competitor is? What are they leaving to do? Apple. Video games, iPad. Yes. They're leaving for video games. And you see, the video game manufacturers, they figured it out years ago. They're smarter than us. The reason why kids are leaving for video games is because the video game manufacturers make it about the kids. They ask the kids exactly what they want, and then they give it to them. And how do we know this? How many of y'all played video games growing up? To date myself, I can remember playing Pong on the Atari. Okay, I can remember getting a ColecoVision. I can remember a PC that couldn't even get outside your home because it had no connection outside the box itself. And we played pixelated, boxy video games. And I remember the day that we actually got a graphics card that worked, and I went, this is cool. This almost looks like real life. And yet, what was the biggest game just a few years ago and still pretty big that all the kids wanted to play? Minecraft. Have you ever seen Minecraft? First time my son shows it to me, he says, this is the greatest game ever made. I said, what, did a 5-year-old make this? Are you kidding me? Look at these graphics. You paid for this, son? That's because that's what the kids wanted. And the video game manufacturers gave it to them. And my son would tell me that he gets these surveys from the video game manufacturers, and in the surveys, they ask him what they want, and he says, and then the next iteration of the game, next time they drop the next Fortnite, it's got in there what the kids asked for. They're doing everything around what the kids want, and the kids are flocking to it, and they're leaving us. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But see, us well-meaning adults, all we want is for our kids to have the same memories and our kids to have the same life skills and the same values and have the same role models we had growing up in sports, and we've accidentally gone just a little too far. So tonight we'll talk about why those myths are driving us to go a little too far and how we can rein it back in, make it about the kids, and still create some amazing athletes and human beings in the process. There's another reason why kids leaving sports scares me.
I probably would make a time machine.
I would make medicine for the sick.
I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live.
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
That's my
Eu
favorite answer.
cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
Watch closely. So about 4 years ago, our friends at Design to Move made that PSA to warn us about the dangers that we were creating and driving our kids away from activity. And that 70% of our kids are leaving sports by 13. And the sad part there is not just the fact that from 13 to 23 is when the brain is still rapidly developing and we're still shaping these kids into wonderful human beings, and so they're missing those opportunities for character traits and life skills and values and all the other pieces of the puzzle. But the other piece of the side of that is all those kids that stop before 13, they're in serious danger from a health standpoint. And of course, I've been up to Canada multiple times, to Prince Edward Island, to Toronto. I was just in Thunder Bay, and that's the conversation. I was there up there with Sport for Life. I was up there with physical literacy experts, and that's what everybody's talking about. Is our kids aren't playing anymore. We've made it so elite, so competitive. We've over-eliteed everything to the point where they're leaving it completely, and they don't want anything to do with free play even. They want to play video games. And here's the scary thing. I look in the mirror at my kids in the back seat, 14 and 12 years old, and I think I took 5 years of your life away because I was one of the coaches who accidentally drove one of my kids to decide to quit sports. I took 5 years from my kid when I did that. And that's scary. And it's not obesity that we worry about. It's the fact that when the body stops moving, it's not developing properly. And if you read the physical literacy stuff that's out in Canada, especially from Drew Mitchell and Dean Creelars, they talk about the fact that it's bone density. We lose bone density when we don't exercise. That it's the susceptibility to like 36 different diseases when our kids aren't moving. That's what we're giving to them. So one of the reasons why I like giving this talk, why I like talking to groups like you, is because I feel like we're giving those 5 years back when we start thinking about how we can change the game. So let's jump into the myths of youth sport. Myth number 1, there's this belief that we have to specialize early. This kid, going pro. I know it. He's got a great backhand, right? And we see it all the time. I'm a soccer guy, so a lot of my stories will come from the soccer realm. But I saw it all the time. I'd go out and I'd coach 8-year-old kids, and you'd come across a coach who went out and picked the biggest, fastest, strongest kids and was beating everybody 8-9 or nothing and went, I'm the best coach. Look at what I can do. That's talent collection at that current age. But it does nothing for the bigger picture for our kids, and those kids will not go on to be the pro athletes. You guys have one of the greatest athletes ever to grace the face of the earth as proof, actually two, as proof that specialization doesn't work. Wayne Gretzky. I just heard a story from Drew Mitchell who said that Wayne Gretzky once made a comment about the fact that his dad took his skates and everything away one summer and said, you play something else during the summer. And that his favorite time was when the seasons would change because you could put away one stick for the other, because apparently he was a lacrosse player too. Steve Nash, right? He's just as good a soccer player. He could play in the MLS right now if he wanted to. Phenomenal basketball player. The guy had no right to be on a basketball court. Because he was a multi-sport athlete, he dominated the basketball court. So early sports specialization, I don't know why we continue to buy this myth other than the fact that we make a ton of money when we can coach kids year-round. I was that coach figuring out how to make ends meet, and so my kids had to have mandatory training sessions in the winter, right? But we tell our kids that if they want scholarships, if they want to go pro, if they want to be the best in the world, they have to specialize. Sorry, this is obviously U.S. schools, but if you look at the two of the biggest sports conferences in U.S., this is from 2014, and if you look at the number of multi-sport athletes they're recruiting across all their sports, 83.7% in the Big Ten, the top 5 schools. 81% going to the SEC. I was at University of Florida 2006 to 2008 when they won 3 national championships in basketball and 2 in football and a Heisman Trophy winner. And the reason that kid, Tim Tebow, won a Heisman Trophy had nothing to do with the fact that they were a bunch of specialized athletes. It had to do with, or a bunch of football players. It had to do with the fact that Urban Meyer was recruiting athletes only. Tim Tebow, proven by the NFL, not your typical quarterback. But in college, he was absolutely dominant. They say he may have been one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever. But that is because he was surrounded by unbelievable athletes who did an amazing job. And so they knew that if they had Tebow driving the bus with all these phenomenal athletes, they'd win some national championships, and they did. But when spring rosters would come out, it just said athlete, 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 athlete next to all the players. Percy Harvin played in the NFL, unbelievable running back. He played 3 different positions in college. In fact, he didn't come in as an H-back, wide receiver, running back. He was actually at one point a quarterback. And one of the fastest players on the University of Florida team that year was also a national champion in track. They were recruiting athletes at University of Florida, part of the SEC. So if the colleges who are giving out the scholarships are recruiting multi-sport athletes, why are we still telling our 12-year-olds that they need to specialize now if they want that scholarship? But let's go even higher, because I get this all the time. Yeah, well, what about Lionel Messi, right? Lionel Messi, one of the greatest soccer players ever to play the game, he specialized. Not quite. See, originally the clubs, the sporting clubs in Europe, were sporting clubs. They weren't soccer or football clubs. They started out playing multiple sports, and then soccer just became the one that made the most money for them. Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, FC Barcelona, they all had other sports they played. In fact, when the Dutch came over and started running the Barcelona camp, Johan Cruyff, one of the greatest coaches of all time, if you look at the lineage of coaches who are currently coaching across the world, they all somehow come from that family tree of Cruyff and Ajax from the Dutch. When he was at Barcelona, he would get mad when he found out his senior players were only playing soccer. He had 2 rules. I never want to see him hanging out in the dorm rooms bored on a beautiful day, and I don't want to see him playing only soccer. They must play other sports. What about closer to home? U.S. women just recently won their third World Cup, right? How many of them do you think played multiple sports? How many sports do you think were played by all of them? Anybody want to take a guess? 4 or 5? 13. 13. As a matter of fact, one of them played 8 different sports. Can you imagine that monthly gas bill? And what it must have cost? Yeah, Abby Wambach, of course, one of the best players in the world. She could have played Division I basketball if she wanted. She was a phenomenal basketball player. In fact, she says one of the reasons she's so good in the air on headers is because she understood playing in the air from basketball underneath the rim. She knew how to land properly because she was used to having feet around her and people nearby, which we teach our athletes to run faster and jump higher, but sometimes we forget to tell them how to decelerate and how to land properly, and then we get all these injuries. This team here dominated the world. The world is catching up, but that's because the rest of the world has started playing multiple sports as well. This was a 13-sport team. So if people winning the World Cup and people playing professional sports and people playing college aren't specializing, we should definitely not specialize with our kids. Second myth, this focus on outcomes and not process. So when I started coaching when I was 16, and I can recall being in my 20s, and I never had a losing season. And I can remember getting halfway through that season, and we were right on the brink, 500. And I remember counting the games that were left in the season and seeing how many I needed to win to stay above 500 so I could continue to brag that I'd never had a losing record. Can you believe that? How many of y'all, you don't even have to raise your hands, but just think to yourself, have you ever had that mindset? Because we all get caught up in it. Because the only way kids want to play for us is if we can say we have enough wins. If we can say on our club website for soccer that we've won this many state cups, that we've put this many kids in college, and that we've won these tournaments, then people will come to us. And earlier, Corey and I were talking about it. The winning is so ingrained in our society that even volunteer coaches are afraid to lose because they're afraid they won't be asked to come back next year. These are the suckers in the back of the room when somebody says, we need a coach, they go, uh-oh, I just raised my hand, why did I do that? And yet now they're afraid they won't be asked to come back. We're begging for people to come and work with the kids. But winning is ingrained in our society to the point where we've forgotten that the process is what gets us to the wins. So this guy goes to a Zen Roshi, and he says to the Zen Roshi, he says, I want to be Zen, just like you. I want to get there. I want to be that calm, that in touch with myself, and that just relaxed and flowing with the world. I want to feel that. I want to be there. How long will that take if I study with you? And the teacher says, 10 years. He says, I can come every weekend. I'll spend every weekend with you. Friday in the evening, I'll show up. I'll stay till late Sunday. I'll go back, go through my work week, and see you the next weekend. If I come every weekend, how long will it take then? He said, 20 years. He said, all right, look, I've lived a good life. I've got a nice nest egg. I'll tell you what, I'll retire for a little bit. I'll come and stay with you as long as I can. I'll be your personal student, and I want you to just get me to Zen. How long then? And he said 30 years. He says, how come every time I tell you I'll try harder to get there, you tell me it's going to take longer? And he says, my student, that's your first lesson, because when you have one eye on the goal, you only have one eye on the path. And the point of this is when we talk with coaches, when I work with coaches about dealing with youth athletes or parents, is when we start talking about scholarships and winning and rankings at 8-year-olds, national rankings, the kids start taking their eyes off the path and start looking at that. Playing youth sports is not easy. Learning hockey is probably one of the most difficult. That's why I didn't play it. I couldn't skate. I'd have loved to. I'm a huge hockey fan. It's one of the most difficult things you can do. And yet, with the pressures of their friends, the social pressures, the psychological pressures, the physiological pressures of being kids and growing up and trying to grow into their bodies, and the pressures of the coaches and the parents and everything else around them, it is really hard to play youth sports under that pressure. So if they're always lifting an eye from the path to look to the goal, this is why we're seeing our kids bounce right out of the game. They don't want that anymore. Third myth. Youth sports is an investment. I've had parents actually come to me who are paying $5,000 to $10,000 a year and who say, I picked this club because they've put the most kids in college with scholarships. Did I make the right choice? And I've had to tell those parents, there's a thing called a scholarship fund. You might want to invest in that. Here's why. We're told that if we put our kids in the right programs with the right coaches and the right people, they'll guarantee them a scholarship. One, that sets an expectation on our children that they didn't ask for. It sets a different relationship with our kids, but more importantly, it's a bold-faced lie. It's a lie. Do you know what the average college scholarship is in the U.S.? I know it's a little bit different here. You guys have a better deal, I think. $10,000 is the average college scholarship in the U.S. $10,000. I've got a 19-year-old. She deferred for a year. Thank goodness, because I can't find a school that will only accept $10,000 to teach her. $10,000 is maybe room and board, and that's it. But that's what the average scholarship is, because the big sports take a big chunk of the money, and the smaller sports, if they do get a scholarship, and even the big sports, they get a big sum. The school comes and says, here's $20,000. Go pick your team of 20 players and use that $20,000 across all 20 of them. And you really want to go get that one great player, so you set aside like $6,000 or $7,000, hoping you can entice that one player. Then you're stuck with $13,000, $14,000 left to get the other kids. What schools love are the multi-sport, multi-activity people. I've talked to so many coaches who've built great programs on these multi-activity people, where a kid comes to them and said, man, you are a phenomenal soccer player. What else do you do? Oh, I'm in drama, and I'm on yearbook, and I'm in Civil Air Patrol, and I was an Eagle Scout, and I'm et cetera. And they go, that's awesome. Let's go get you grants and scholarships for all those other activities, and then I'm going to put $1,000 on top so that you get a full ride. That's how the coaches do it in the U.S. And yet parents think, oh man, if I just invest $10,000 a year for the next 10 years, my kid will get a scholarship and everything is totally worth it. 4% are the odds. Of all the current freshmen in high school right now, roughly 4% will get a college scholarship. But don't worry, my kid's going to go pro and get a shoe contract. 0.9%. How many of you all played sports growing up? How many of you all in this room are pro athletes currently? How many of you all in this room played pro? Okay, so when I gave my TEDx, Anthony Munoz was in the room. I asked that question, and Anthony Munoz I said, yeah, put your hand down, Anthony. I just a couple weekends ago actually asked that question. Was it in Thunder Bay? No. I was in Wyoming. 4 hands went up. 4 former pro athletes in the room. That's the most I've ever seen. I was blown away in Wyoming. Yeah, you see, we're all the 99%ers, right? We played sports, we didn't go pro. Has sports benefited you in life? I'm standing up here cheating the system completely, folks. My wife says, you got to stop telling people you're cheating the system. But I am. I'm standing in front of you because of sports. I played all the sports under the sun growing up. Soccer was my worst sport. I quit every other sport. I go to college. I pick a college based on the fact it was a great school and it just so happened to have a soccer team. Fell absolutely in love because my high school coach gave me the best piece of advice I'd ever gotten. He says, let's say that you're walking on campus day one of your life at that new school and you break your leg and they say you can never play again. Is that where you want to spend the next 4 years of your life? So I picked my school based on that. To my parents' chagrin, because I was a 5-year legacy at Miami University in Ohio, so I would have gone for free because I'd gotten the Harrison Scholar, and I had a couple other scholarship offers at other schools, but they didn't match what I found and fell in love with at this little school in Davidson, North Carolina called Davidson College. So my dad was borrowing money from my grandmother to make sure I could stay there. So I used sports to get to a school I wanted to be at. Then I used that school to decide, hey, you know what, I think I'll go get a master's in sports psychology because maybe I'll be a coach for a living because my coach got me into coaching at 16. So then I got that. And then one day my wife said, you know, you'd make a great teacher. Go get your teaching degree. So I went back and got another master's in teaching. But being in the classroom wasn't the same as being on the field. I did 1 year in kindergarten and went right back to the fields. And then life blew up for me. And I'm standing in front of you all because I played sports growing up and it gave me this pathway for my life. And my kids want to play soccer with me. I can't do any of the skills I used to be able to. Maybe I was better up here than I ever was down here. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing I do carry away. All those amazing memories, all the life skills they gave me, all the character traits I hope I pass on to all my players and my kids, and some amazing role models who shaped me into who I was, including my own dad who coached me until I was 13 years old. That was the investment. So when we tell our kids that when we talk about sports being an investment, I'm just going to throw some numbers just so you can see them. Again, U.S. schools, but you can see if you really want your kids to have a shot at playing sports in college, go to fencing. All right? Same thing on the boys' side, go to fencing. Otherwise, the numbers are really, really low. So if you want to see sports as an investment, and it's okay to talk about investing, but what you want to do is you want to talk about investing in people. That's what my sons and I started talking about. For them, when sports wasn't it because they were so burned out and blown out by it, we found something else for them, and we said, we're investing in you as human beings. We want to give you all the advantages that you can possibly have to succeed in life, and if we're not going to find it in sports, we're going to find it in something. And so we found Civil Air Patrol for my kids. Thank goodness. Because obviously, sports wasn't on the docket for them in college. So those are the myths of youth sport. I want to shift a little bit because originally I was going to talk about high performance or performing. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about performance. First off, we need to redefine high performance because when we start saying high performance, Corey just said it earlier to me, we're talking about 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. High performance? High performance is this idea that we perform better than everyone around us when you use it as one term. But when you break it down into two separate words, it just means that you're performing a function or task, and high just means that you may be doing it a little bit better than you were last time. So instead of high performance, we should be talking to our athletes about excellence. How can they achieve excellence? Because every kid is capable of being excellent. You can't be the best kid on the team, but you can be better than you were yesterday. And so we have to start shifting that. But if we want to break down to performance completely and understand how our kids can perform at their very best and how we as coaches, parents, and administrators can help them get there, we have to understand Timothy Galway from the Inner Game of Tennis, his definition of performance, which is just potential minus interference. And what I love about that is it goes back to the whole idea that every child has an opportunity to achieve every day individual excellence. Not every kid's going to go pro. Not every kid's going to make the top team. Not every kid's going to score all the goals. But every kid has a chance to step on that ice and be the very best they are in that moment with the skills they've been given and better than they were yesterday, and that's excellence, and that is high performance. If they can outmatch the person they were yesterday, today, then they're performing at their best, right? The problem is, we as adults, because of these three myths, we lump the interference in there. So they step on the ice with all the potential in the world, and then in comes the interference. And interference takes away from the performance. Interference could be weather conditions. It could be, of course, we know this, those of you that are coaches, could be the referee's fault too, right? Referees, weather conditions, the other team recruited all the biggest, strongest, fastest kids, right? And they're just knocking the snot out of you, right? It could be ice conditions that day. Could be the kids had a bad day at school. Could be all the parents screaming and waving dollar bills over the glass at them. You score a goal, you get a $5, right? It could be all those things, right? That interference takes away from the performance, and here's why. I'm going to show you two videos. Listen for the mistakes. I've watched that video tons of times because that's John O'Sullivan's daughter, and he said she made 3 mistakes, and I can still only find 2 in there because she just kept going. What was missing from that performance? Sports fans, what was missing from that performance? Have fun. She didn't look like she was having fun, did she? What was missing, though, from an interference perspective? The cheering. When she messed up, did her teacher jump up and go, no, pinky on C sharp, we worked all week on it. Mikey, get in there for it. You get on my bench. You're useless today. Or when she messed up, did a parent jump up and say, what are you thinking? Here, let me show you. Get out of the way. And yet, when we get to youth sports, for some reason, that's what happens. And we're perfectly sane, rational, professional, intelligent human beings. But the moment we cross over into that arena of sports, sports sanity kicks in, and we do crazy things. We want to mow, or in this case, we want to Zamboni everything in front of our kids so it's perfectly smooth for them, so they never have to feel the pain that we felt, the failure that we felt, go through the things that we went through. The problem is those things we went through shaped us. Falling down shapes us just as much as skating straight. Touching hot burners shapes us just as much as knowing I don't touch that burner anymore, right? So our kids need to go through the process the same. That recital, and I've had people say, well, that's different. Play practice and piano recitals, those are very different from sports. Are they? Child's performing a new skill or task under pressure with a teacher and parents watching. Pretty much sounds like youth sports, right? Any activity. Let me juxtapose that.
Back to the middle. Hey, go, 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 go. Keep that ball, Caitlin. Keep the ball. Keep going.
She cheered for that. They scored.
They just scored another goal. That's the course if I get better.
Weaving through the people now. On the phone.
I got it. I got it. It's like a cheerleader on crack.
Sometimes that last comment doesn't come through, but yeah, right there. Pretty crazy, huh? Would you want her on your team? That's my wife. No, just kidding. A couple people went. No. But we show that video once in a while just to remind people she did nothing wrong. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't angry. She wasn't yelling things like strike the bum out or you suck or anything like that. Some of the other things we hear. She wasn't attacking the referee. She just was so overzealous that it was just like noise, white noise. But we show that video every once in a while, and John and I were talking, and he said, you know, one of these days we're going to show that video, and she's going to be in the room. Then a couple months later, I get a phone call or an email from John. Guess what? That video? Yeah, I found the club. He showed the video. The director comes up after and goes, she's in my club. But the thing is she doesn't do anything wrong, and you'll see a parent later on who it's the exact opposite. They actually, it was almost malicious. This is a mom who loves her kids so much and loves the experience so much that she just wants to jump in there and Zamboni the whole experience, right? And I have no problem cheering for goals, but that was the only loud and boisterous cheer we heard. When I was coaching 8-year-old girls a couple years back, I had all these little teeny girls because I didn't pick them based on, Corey was saying, I didn't pick them based on today, I picked them based on tomorrow. And I just wanted to coach these little girls, and they had potential, and we wanted to work on it. And at 8 in soccer, it's parallel play, right? They don't pass. Right? You get the ball, you go. And so we didn't encourage them to pass. But these little girls got really excited because they had older brothers that I coached, and their older brothers, we were working on all kinds of really cool stuff with possession. So the girls wanted to try it. So we started working throughout the season on possession. I thought, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, it's okay. I understand at their development level and skill, I just want them having those technical skills in place. But they started asking about how do we get open? Because tell an 8-year-old, get open. Get on the field and get open. And they go find the biggest open space. It might even be on the field. They might be on the playground. They're like, look, I'm open. There's nobody around. So we had to learn something else. We say, show both feet. Because if your teammate can see both your feet, they can pass you the ball. That's why you got the pretty pink shoes and orange shoes and everything like that, so they can see your feet really good. But if they can't see both your feet, then you're not open. They can't pass you the ball. And then the girls decided it was hero feet. When I'm here, I'm your hero, and I can help you if you're in trouble. And that's how they learned to start to get open for their teammates, using their language, and then passing to their teammates. We're playing this team. And he was that coach. And I was that coach at one point in my career, too. He picked all the biggest, fastest, strongest kids. As a matter of fact, I was checking driver's license before the game because a couple of the kids were as big as me. I'm short, but wow, right? They were tall. And he had his tallest kid on the front and his best kicker in the back, and they'd win the ball, and they'd knock it long, and she'd run over 3 people, including my goalie, and knock the goal down and score. They're up like 8-0. And one of my girls in the back gets the ball, and she looks up, and there's just a sea of the other team in front of her. And one of her teammates is over on the far side showing both feet. And she's like, hero feet, hero feet. And she sees her and she plays it to her. And she gets the ball and she turns and people are like, man on. And she looks and there's all kinds of girls there. So instead of panicking, she turns and she plays it back to the same person who's going, I got hero feet. That person gets it, plays it over to the other sideline. That's 1, 2, 3, up the sideline, 4, to the fourth person. She's running down the wing and somebody screams, shoot, because that is the dirtiest word in sports right there, shoot. The girl's like 20 yards from goal, no angle whatsoever, and everybody in the sideline is going, shoot! And so what she do? She shoots, and it goes like straight out of bounds. But my parents start cheering. Oh, wow, 4, was that 4, was that 5? Oh, wow, that's great. Way to go, you worked so hard. And I'm like, ladies, fantastic possession. You should be so proud of yourselves. Let's try it again. Coach from the other team looks at me and goes, what are you cheering about? I'm beating you like 8-0. I said, but they just passed the ball 4 or 5 times. That's good. That's progress. So I'm still winning 8-0. He didn't get it. My girls got it, though. They totally got it. And it was really exciting to see that they could get more out of sports than just, well, you know, the end result. So anyway, back to this, okay? She didn't do anything wrong except for she cheered on the goal. Would have been cool if she cheered for, like, possession or something like those my parents did a couple years back. She didn't say anything bad, but she's interference. Totally interference. Because imagine that you're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and you're out on the ice, and you've got all the parents yelling things to you. You've got the coaching staff yelling things to you. You got your teammates yelling things to you. You got your referee helping instruct you, and the other team yelling stuff. So now you have thousands of pieces of information coming in, and you're just like, man, I just don't want to fall. Right? I want to get off the inside edge just once and glide, right? See, I learned. I was paying attention. You see, athletes have to make decisions very quickly in a very short period of time and under a lot of pressure. And it's so much easier to make that decision when their brain is completely clear. The problem is what we do is we give them all these road signs instead of this way or that way. Should I do this or this? And instead it's, no, do this. Don't listen to what coach says. I know better. I played high school. Do that. Right? Or it's the referee, and it's the other parents, and it's the other coaches, and it's everybody else giving them all these instructions. And we think, oh, the brain can multitask. It can, maybe, but not with that many tasks. And honestly, it's actually a myth. If you look at the brain like a computer, which just processes input and then creates functions, output, right? It executes. So if you do that, then the brain has to allocate resources to things, like memory, short-term and long-term memory. And so I know that we can't multitask, because how many of you have ever been on a phone call and trying to write an email at the same time? Yeah? Did something that was said in the phone call end up in the email, or vice versa? Yeah, I see some smiling faces. Yeah, because I've done that, right? And all of a sudden, you know, you're writing an email and it says, and get milk too. John, I need those TPS reports by Tuesday and get milk too. Wait, sorry, honey, can I call you back, right? Because that's what happens. The brain says, oh, it's a person on the phone's talking, so all resources go over here to the a priori thing. All right, listen to the phone call. Great. Oh, wait, fingers are moving. Oh, he's typing. Go back over here and do what he's doing. The brain is allocating as many resources back and forth, so it actually can't multitask. So our children are on the field, and they're trying to do one task in front of them, and we're trying to create all these other tasks, so we create this interference for them. And I'm going to prove the interference issue with our next test. How many of you all have ever heard of the Stroop test? The Stroop effect. 1930s, U.S. professor came up with this concept of the Stroop effect. It actually came from Germany in the 1920s. It's one of the most cited research studies on the planet, with over 700 and something citations. What he proved is that the brain will slow down when it has multiple stimuli. Slow down to control the environment when it has multiple stimuli. And so he does this short little test that proves that the brain will create either cognitive dissonance or a priori memory and other pieces of the psychological puzzle to slow itself down so it gets at least one task right. So we're going to do the Stroop test together. The next screen, I'm going to throw the screen up there, and you'll see words. And I just want you to read the color that those words say. Blue, red, green, yellow, whatever. You'll read from left to right, and then left to right, all the way down like you're reading a page. I'll start counting when you start here, and I'll stop counting when I hear the final one yelled. I want you to shout them. I want you to say them out loud so you can hear me. Read the words for me, please. Go. is so scary. I was just in LA this week, and they were 14 seconds too. I think every time I do this, it's 13 or 14 seconds, me counting, so it's my seconds. And you zip right through that page. Was that hard? Difficult? Last year I was in Nebraska, and I did this with a group of coaches, and one goes, man, that was really tough because the people next to me were on a different color word. I can see why that's a distraction. I was like, oh, no, that's the baseline. That's not even the test yet. So you read them. I'm going to toss another slide up there, and again, I want you to read the color word. So it's green, yellow, purple, red. Just read the color word. Read the word. Don't pay attention to the color of the word. Make sense? You're reading the word out loud. You ready? Go. So this is what's crazy. Was it a little bit harder? Okay, so here's what I want you to do now. You've read the word both times. Now I want you to tell me the color. Don't read the word. Tell me the color of the word. Somebody's like, oh, don't worry, I got photographic memory. I already memorized this. Go. We still going? Did we quit? Raise your hand if you just quit. Say, forget it. Yeah. So you guys were like, man, we just busted his experiment. We totally disproved him on the second one, weren't you? You see, our brain can read faster than it can identify colors. It's been trained to read faster than it can identify colors. It takes the brain longer to identify a color. So to help with the process, the brain will slow down to make sure it gets it right. But there's cognitive dissonance occurring because the brain's like, wait a minute, whoa. I'm supposed to say green, but that word is blue. So what's going on here, dude? That cognitive dissonance slows us down even further. If you, as rational, intelligent, professional, sane, etc. adults, had trouble with this task, we've just mimicked what a sports event is like for our kids. Do I listen to coach? Do I listen to the parents? Do I listen to the one parent who's yelling, shoot? Or do I listen to parents yelling, deke him? Or do I listen to coach that says, whatever, drop it back, right? They're getting too many inputs. And so what's happening is we're decreasing performance. And where that comes out, being a coach and a parent, I know this for a fact, where that comes out is at some point in time I go, why'd you freeze? We worked on this all week. You did this so well in training. What in the world happened in the game? We happened. And we meant well. We meant well, but because we meant so much, we went overboard and we gave too much information. There's absolutely nothing wrong with kids learning on their own and experiencing on their own. And more importantly, a lesson my grandmother once taught me. You'll touch it once and you'll never touch it again, won't you? When I touched the hot stove. She didn't say, no, don't touch it. She watched me reach out and she went, I wouldn't touch that. You won't touch it a second time, will you, kiddo? She was also the same one when my son rolled off the changing table right out from underneath my wife's hand. She says, oh, don't worry, they ain't right. They ain't been dropped at least twice in their life. He's still not right, trust me. We want so much for our children that we just create this interference that actually drags down their performance. And then, because they can't perform, and competence is a big piece of the puzzle, when kids don't feel competent, what do? They leave the game. Or if coaches and parents are yelling at them, now they've burned out, they leave the game. So I don't want to leave you all feeling dread, because this is how I felt a couple years ago. Wow. All these years of coaching, how much damage have I done, even to my own kids, because I just didn't know better. So I want to move next into the mindset of our children, and then we'll give you 3 things that you can take away tonight that can help your coaches, your parents, other administrators, everybody. Just shift the perspective a little bit. Redefine what it means for kids to perform. One is, how many of y'all are familiar with Carol Dweck's research on mindset? Oh, awesome. So we get to talk about it a little bit. Sorry, I'm going to bore you, if that's okay, because you've heard it before. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset. Great book. It's recently come under fire because in today's conditions, people can't completely replicate the book. But it was valid, reliable, empirical research that was peer-reviewed. It's legitimate. It's just we can't seem to recreate it as well today. That doesn't mean she's not wrong. It just means the conditions are different. What she discovered, though, was when she was giving these puzzles to these kids, she discovered that children have two kinds of mindsets, either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So let me set the stage. What she was doing with children was she was giving them a puzzle. The first one was really easy. So she told half of the room, "You are smart," when they got done with the puzzle. "Wow, you are smart." "Yeah." And the other half of the room, she said, "You work hard. You did well in that puzzle because you work hard." She gave them a second puzzle. This time, she gave them a choice. Do you want a hard puzzle or easy puzzle? Guess which group, almost to a person, chose the easy puzzle? Smart group. They were just given some gift. They have no idea where they got it. They have no idea how they earned it, but they weren't about to let go of that gift, and they wanted more praise. So why prove the world that they're actually not smart? I'll take the easy route. Have you ever seen athletes who do that? Athletes who've been way overpraised, and so they're always finding the easiest group to play in so they can dominate, versus those other athletes who are going and finding the challenges? Yeah. These kids didn't want to disprove her theory. They didn't want to let go of this gift they were suddenly endowed with, so they chose the easy puzzle. The You Work Hard group said, "Well, my value is in working hard, so I'll take the challenge, please." She gave them a third puzzle. Everybody got the same puzzle, really hard. Again, the group that was told you are smart, they did not like the puzzle. They were upset. They wanted to quit. The group that were told you work hard, they thanked her for the challenge. They dug in and worked hard. They actually engaged in it more. They were totally digging the process, not the outcome, but the process that we talked about earlier. One of them, my wife says, "I have a tough time with a 12-year-old saying this," although now that we have a 12-year-old son who does say things like this, she said, "All right, I get it now." One of them actually said, "Thank you for challenging me." Have you ever coached those kids who come up to you and say, "Coach, what can I do to get better? Coach, what can I work on? Coach, give me some feedback." That's a kid that loves the challenge and loves the growth. You ever had those kids, you tell them, "Hey, you did this. If you could do it differently, this would help." And you go, "That kid's uncoachable. Won't listen to a thing I say." No, that kid's been praised so much for being something he or she doesn't know how to do it, that when they are faced with a reality that they may not be what they're told they are, they shut down. So, it gets worse. You smart people. Ooh. You didn't do well on the puzzle. She put a plant in the hallway with a clipboard, another researcher. And when you came out of the room and she said, "How'd you do?" Guess what you told her? Liars! They said, the smart group said, "Oh, I did great. I did well. I aced it." They lied to a total stranger about how they performed on a random puzzle in a research project because they didn't want to lose this gift they'd been given that they had no idea how they got. Right? You Work Hard group, I didn't do well. But that's okay, I'll get it next time, I'm learning. Fourth puzzle, easier than the first one. Scores for the You Are Smart group, I always get these numbers backwards, but again, all stats are made up, 70% of all stats are made up on the stage, so it's okay if I don't get it right. The group that told You Are Smart, they went down by 30%. The group that was told You Work Hard, their scores went up by 20%. 50% swing in scores off of 6 little words. You work hard, you are smart. What she proved is that there is a thing called a mindset, and we, with our words as adults, can help shape other people's mindsets, and our own inner voice can shape them. But the thing with our inner voice is our inner voice comes from the environment around us a lot of times. So what we say to children becomes their own voice, right? Fixed mindset kids believe that everything's about results. They cheat to continue to get the good grades so they can prove to the world they're smart. Effort is meaningless, and I know this for a fact because my daughter was one of those kids, and I had a counselor say to have a hard conversation with us when she was in like 5th or 6th grade. Your daughter will not be valedictorian even though she's so smart because we've all done her disservice, and all we've ever told her is, you are smart. She had just read the book, and she was right. 7th grade, my daughter had a science project that lasted the whole year. She completed the project but lost it the day it was supposed to be turned in. The teacher said, "It's okay. You worked hard all year and you're smart. So we'll just knock that part of your grade off. We won't count it against your grade. Please don't do her any favors." She gets to high school. We dragged her kicking and screaming through high school. She went in testing into that high school, the 3rd highest in the grade. She came out about middle of the pack. Why? Her first 2 years she struggled. She wouldn't do the homework. She was failing calculus tests. And she goes, "Dad, I'm smart. I know math. Why do I need to study? But I'm failing." I said, "Honey, calculus it layers. You need to study. The algorithms start later. If you don't know those, you're dead in the water, kiddo. She wanted to be an engineer. That quickly went out the window when she realized, oh, wow, right? She was smart enough to do it, but nobody had ever taught her to work for it. The girl that was valedictorian, as proven by her counselor several years earlier, was the hardest worker in the class. Just as intelligent, but understood the value of hard work. So my son's now going through the same thing. Does the homework sometimes, doesn't turn it in. The comment in our household is, that's like baking cookies and throwing it away. What are you doing? At least eat the cookies after you do the work. He just had 2 missing assignments this past week. I watched him do the assignments. So his sister pulls him aside and says, kiddo, she's 19 now. Don't make the same mistakes I made. You need to work hard. You need to apply yourself. You can't always get by on just being smart. Wow. Right? That's a fixed mindset. And that what happens is, and you see this, our elite performers at 8, 9, 10 years old are not our pros at 19. Their performance averages out as everybody catches up to them. But we believe that what they do at 10 or 11 or 12 will predict their future. I knew a kid who was 5'8", 12, 13 years old, dominated the basketball court, dominated the football field, hated football, but his brother talked him into it because he was one of the biggest kids on the field and fast because he played soccer. He dominated it. Everybody said he's going to go pro in one of those. He's going to be a pro basketball player. Look at the size of that kid. Guess where that kid is now? Standing in the room with you. I'm still 5'8". Yeah. All my peers caught up to me by about 8th, 9th grade and said, ha ha, see you, loser. I was the 3rd shortest kid on my 8th grade basketball team. I had no shot at playing high school. But if we'd listened to everybody, we'd have put all of our eggs in that one basketball basket, wouldn't we? No pun intended. My performance averaged out as the world caught up. And in basketball, I never learned to work hard. I didn't have to. All I had to do was go like that and go, ha. Oh, no, you can't get it. No, can't get it. Son, work on your shot. Why? Why can't you just throw it towards the basket? They can't get it. Growth mindset. Effort is everything. They try new things. We talked about it. They seek input. They want you to give them feedback. And anything can be learned. Who's a fan of Tim Ferriss? He's got an amazing podcast. He's interviewed some unbelievable people. The thing about Tim Ferriss is he decided in his 30s that anything could be done if he just applied himself to it. So he went and learned how to tango dance in Argentina and won a national championship and set a world record for most spins. That wasn't enough. He went over to Asia and became a national champion in a martial arts. Then he went to Japan and learned to shoot arrows on horseback, sideways. Learned to hold his breath for more than 2 minutes underwater. We're learning to run a 5-minute mile. I mean, the guy, every chance he gets, he learns something new. Tim Tebow, great example. Pros weren't in it for him for football. So what did he do? He went and played baseball. And when somebody said, is this a PR stunt? He said, no, this isn't a PR stunt. I want every kid in America to know that just because one pathway doesn't work doesn't mean you can't learn a new one and go that path. There you go. And I go back to Steve Nash. Didn't you say he was just playing with, what team? It wasn't Toronto. He was just playing with the Whitecaps. Guy dominated basketball. Now he wants to play with the Whitecaps. He's never too old to learn something new. All right, so let's finish. Why do kids play sports? Dumbest question of the weekend. Come on, why do they play? Fun! Somebody said it earlier, right? They said about the piano thing. They play sports for fun. In fact, Amanda Visick, V-I-S-E-K, a researcher at George Washington University, I think when she did the research, she decided to ask kids what fun meant because to us adults, fun, hey, coach, we want to have fun at practice. That's like Lord of the Flies. I am not giving my training over to you because there will be no, I got to maintain control over you kiddos. We're not going to have fun. We're not here to sit around a campfire and sing songs, okay, kids? We're here to work. I heard an 8-year-old coach of an 8-year-old girls softball team say, you didn't come here to play, you came here to work. I wanted to call him up next week and say, how many kids showed up at practice on Monday? Just curious, right? Yeah, we want them to work, but we can mask it in what they define as fun because we define fun differently. We think it's chaos and goofing off. They don't. So Amanda asked him, how do you define fun? Guess how many different ways children define fun? Yell out a number. 1. That's us, right? Anybody else? 14? 81. 81 different ways they define fun. Winning is in there at number 48. She ranked them. It included working hard, being challenged, learning a new skill, a coach that cares, a coach that listens, a coach that knows what he or she is doing, being with my friends, getting orange slices at halftime, wearing the jersey, winning, right? All of those define fun. And so now all the research is about, so how do we create an environment for our kids where they, which Bob just talked about, where they have fun, but they're still learning? I did a lot of free play with my kids after I got that master's in education because I was like, holy cow, I'm not playing enough with my kids. And I'd stand with the parents and I'd say, see them? They think they're playing and having fun. I tricked them, they're learning. I just masked the learning in play because transfer of skills, learning of skills and transferring it to the game has to be contextual. If I have them in lines learning a skill, they're not having fun. They're waiting in line going, oh gosh, I'm going to be on that stage all by myself and if I mess up, coach is going to correct me in front of all my friends. This is horrible. But if I get them in a game situation, they don't care anymore. They'll mess up as much as they want. And it's contextual. That mimics the game, just like we talked about. It has to mimic the bigger game. So they should play as much as possible. Why do they quit sports? Does anybody know? Not fun. Yeah, she's now doing research around the not fun maps to figure out what those not fun factors are. So I want to finish with this, because Bob mentioned it, and it leads right into this. How many of you all still have the trophies you got when you were a kid? Years back, my wife said, hey, we got this really cool cabinet. We'll put the china from our wedding in the bottom 2 shelves. You can have the top 3 shelves. Put it in your office and put all of the trophies and medals and everything else that you've won over the years as a player and coach. So when you do videos online, so that people can see them and they're like, man, he really knows his stuff. So I decorated it for like 3 days painstakingly. And then the day of reveal, I'm like, you ready? You ready, honey? You ready? Ta-da! And she looks. Honey, there are no trophies. I don't know where they are. There were a couple in the basement, rusty and dusty, sold at yard sales, used by the kids for school projects. I don't know. I don't have any trophies. And my wife, in all of her brilliance, says, that's awesome. What you have is a memory case, honey. And that was the gift that sports gave me. That's the gift sports gave you. That's the gift we hope sports gives our kids. Memories, right? Look at all the cool memories. That's my wife's number, the first time I ever met her. Go ahead and dial it. It's not her number anymore. I got to black that out, right? Some poor soul's like, why do these people keep calling me and saying they saw my number somewhere? Kids quit sports because it's not fun. So let me finish with 3 quick things that'll help you give the experience back to them. And I've got 4 minutes. I don't want to keep you away from those corners over there, so I'll hurry, all right?
What are you doing?
You guys should recognize this one, by the way.
see.
That's hide and seek? I found you in 2 seconds. Get out of there. If you want to win this game, you got to do a lot better than that.
Sound familiar?
Right? Come on.
Yeah, wait for it.
Get in.
Get in!
Hustle.
You all should be familiar with that one. That was
Now
Hockey
that's the
Canada
way you
years
play the
ago.
game.
They play video games, they play hide and seek, and then we show up and we completely alter it and we take the fun out of it. And they're like, I don't want to play hide and seek anymore. My dad had me hiding in a manhole cover, covered in sewage for 6 hours. My friends never found me. As a matter of fact, they had a search party out. Yeah, but you won the game, didn't you? Yeah, I showed you how to win, son. So what we want to do to give it back to our children is, 1, we want to give control back to them. Give them ownership. When parents come to you with issues, a lot of times, my kid's worried about playing time, my kid's worried about the position he's playing, my kid's worried about this, and the first question should be, have you asked your child? Because I can't count the number of times a parent was worried about something and the kid could care less. I had a dad one time text me during a game. We'll talk after the game. I don't know why you play my son there. He is the best forward on the team, best forward in the city. He'd score all the goals for you if you put him up front. Have you talked to your son? No, why? Because he doesn't want to play forward. He loves playing where he's playing. I'm putting him exactly where he wants, and he's loving it. And don't worry, we're building a system where he'll start scoring goals from that position. Give it time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Became our best goal scorer from outside midfield, right? But he never asked him. It is perfectly okay to show up at a practice and go, kids, do you want to play this game or this game? Do you want to work on this or this tonight? What do you want? Sometimes kids don't want to quit the sport. They'll say, Mom, Dad, I'm done. I don't want to quit. It's not that they don't want to quit. They just want to be heard, right? Secondly, conditions. We have to make it safe to fail. We have to make them believe that it's okay to fail. Listen, failure's a road sign. It is not a stop sign. It is a road sign. It doesn't mean a full, complete death of the moment. What it is it tells us we're either going in the right direction and keep going, or it says you might want to turn around, you're going the wrong way. That's all failure is. It helps us make adjustments. It helps us navigate our way to where we want to go. In our household, we talk about failure being the first attempt in learning. That effort never dies. Next opportunity, or our favorite in our house, because my kids said can't a lot, because it's the greatest excuse on the planet, sort of like, we'll see. Dad, can we get ice cream? We'll see. Oh, man. What? That means we're not getting ice cream. Hey, can you do that? I can't. It's too heavy. I can't. So can't became challenge accepted, no take-backs. Challenge accepted, no take-backs. My kids used it against me. I've been having back muscle issues over the last year, really struggling with this. It's the best I've felt in a year. But a couple months ago, my kids wanted to learn how to surf, because we now live in California. We got to be surfer dudes. My wife, we're in the car, and we're driving, and my wife says, hey, boys want to learn how to surf. Will you learn to surf with them? I said, honey, I can't. My back. My 12-year-old from the back seat. Challenge accepted, no take-backs, Dad. Gotcha. Guess who's going to drown in the next couple months or get bit by a shark? Right here. Remember my son, the one I drove out of sports? If you'll indulge me, I'll tell that quick story, and I'll give you the last one, because it'll lean to this next video. My son, I was a goal scorer growing up. My coach, my mentor, who got me into coaching at 16 and who trained me all through high school and college, he coached one of the most prolific goal scorers of all time, Michelle Akers. So I was the lucky 16-year-old that got to travel around the country to the soccer camps and be her training fodder. She'd go out and train between sessions with the kids, and us, the kids that were the older kids, we'd go out and train with her. She dominated us. I learned so much from her that I got, like Gretzky says, I just learned to be in the right place at the right time. So I got some pretty lucky goals in my career. And then I got to start teaching other players how to score goals and how to use that mentality. So my son inherits the opportunity to be in the same club where my mentor coach is. So we're telling all these fish stories about my goals, and my coach is telling them too. Your dad scored a goal one time from midfield in the snow, uphill, barefoot with 6 people on his back. And the ball was made out of rock. He's a darn good goal scorer. My son goes through a whole year without scoring a goal. An entire year without scoring a goal. I mean, so bad, everybody, even the other teams that knew him, were cheering for him to score. He had one in one game. He gets behind the keeper and he shoots it, and it's spring in Ohio. Spring in Ohio means lots of rain, lots of mud. The ball's going towards goal. He turns like, yes! And it hits a puddle and just spins in the puddle. No! Some kid clears it off the line. But see, when I was working at a club, I was running a club, so I was either coaching his team, coaching his brother's team, or off watching other games or whatever. I didn't make it to all of his games. So what do you think the first question I asked him was when we would get in a car or I'd see him at dinner? Did you score? Did you score? And then did you win? So my son quits. Never tells me why. We're at an amusement park later that year. He doesn't want to ride the rides. He's that kid. He just, no thanks, Dad. Put him in the baby swing and push him, and he goes away going, no, 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 no. And then he'd come back, oh, thank goodness. And he'd push him. He was that kid. So he doesn't ride anything. So he calls his grandma and says, come pick me up. I'm not having fun, and they're not having fun, so I'll come hang at your house till they're done. I'm walking him across the parking lot, and he says to me, Dad, am I a disappointment? 12 years old. He's now 14. Am I a disappointment? I said, son, why would you say that? I love you. I tell you all the time. Why would you say that? He says, well, I'm not a daredevil like you because I don't like riding rides, and I'm definitely not a goal scorer like you. So do I disappoint you? He thought, because that's the one question I always asked him in every car ride and at every dinner, that his whole value was in scoring goals, and that not only was his value in it, not only was his identity in it, but that I wouldn't love him if he wasn't like me, or if he didn't accomplish the things I asked of him. So I was at fault with very simple words of driving my son out of the game. And it's the car ride home that really kills our kids. If you say anything to your parents, tell them not to make the mistake I made or the mistake this guy makes.
Did you tell the coach to put you aside the game?
Yep.
How many times?
I was standing right next to him.
Are you sure? Because I stood right next to you.
I was by him as many times as I could be.
Dude, you're not getting it done. Let me explain something to you. If you do something wrong, do I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, I correct it. Or I tell you so you can correct it. How do you know what to correct if you don't even know why he pulled you out of the game? What'd I tell you about that? Are you scared of him or something?
No.
So why don't you go ask him? Like right now, you know we're gonna have this conversation after the game. You know it's coming.
Keep watching
Hey,
the
this
eyes.
is part of you becoming a young man. If someone does something, you're just gonna take it. So if I was to walk up to you and just slap you inside your face, what are you gonna do? Just turn around and be like, I don't know why that guy did that. It doesn't make any sense, Jay. You act like you're 10 or 9 or 8. Dude, you're just going through the motions. If you're gonna be selfish, you know what? You have other brothers and sisters, okay? We'll take you from out of that school and give them a chance and put them in a private school. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Listen to what the kid says here in a minute.
It confuses me. What's the problem?
Every time I come back, like in the car, I always feel like I'm in trouble or I did something wrong.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
You've had more personal training than any of those kids out there. Okay? Back to the drawing board. Back up to getting early, back up inside the morning, okay?
I'll stop it there. If you could tell, the kid had tears in his eyes, and that was Trophy Kids on HBO. I don't know how that cameraman didn't. In that one car ride, and that was one car ride of hundreds of car rides a year for years that kid endured. In that one car ride, he made it about an investment. He compared him to his siblings, right? He made it about specialization. You got more training than any other kid out there, and he made it about outcomes in that one car ride. And what was the one thing the kid said that really just hit you right between the eyes? I'm in trouble every time I get in the car. That kid's walking to that car every night after practice going, here we go again, trapped in that vehicle with that. And people have tried to say, oh, well, he was well-meaning. Here's the thing. We got one shot. We got one shot at creating a relationship with the kids we coach and with the kids in our families to change their lives, to transform their lives, and to leave these powerful echoes that go way beyond any game. We got one shot at it. And this past year, my dad called. There was a family emergency. I didn't have the money or time to get home. And I didn't want to go home for the reason of the emergency. I didn't want to be there for that. But I got on a plane, and I went home. Because my dad went to every single game I played and every single game I coached. And he would sit on that far sideline and tell people, that's my son. And so when he called, I went. And he doesn't cry often, and he was crying at dinner that night because both my brother and I showed up, and so did the siblings of his brothers because he has 5 brothers. And he says, look at this. This was an event none of us wanted to be here for, and it brought us back together, and all the kids came back for us. And he started crying. Do you want that for your kids? Do you want 20 years from now your athletes to come back and say, thank you, you changed my life, and because of that, I'm now changing the lives of others because of you? Do you want when you call your own kids to come home and say, I'm here, Mom, I'm here, Dad? So I don't care what he thought he was doing, but when he calls 20 years from now, I don't know if that kid's going to want to get in that car. So tell your parents, all they ever need to say to the kids is, I love watching you play. That's it. Now, challenge to you for the rest of the week, and because we've all been given challenges. Scott Birkin says that all progress hinges on the gap between who will talk in private and who will act in public. Take something from Bob, take something from Corey, take something from me, take something from Peter, take something from one of the coaches you're sitting at a table with in one of the sessions. And if it changes the way you coach or changes the way you run your organization, take it and be bold and run with it and act in public, because we've got to stop just talking in private. Thank you all.